job much?
So
None at all.
here I am on the sidewalk, officer, filming away since I'm not allowed to film on that side of the sidewalk.
Have a nice day, man.
This is Susan Bassi, and for those who follow this platform, you know that we don't report on national politics, but on local courts. The police officers, the lawyers, and the judges who are involved in those courts. And in these courts, sheriff's deputies are contracted to provide security. They act as bailiffs inside the courtrooms and make on average $300,000 a year. The judges sitting in these public courtrooms make on average $220,000 a year. But it's what the judges do with public resources that is best seen when they appoint attorneys in family law cases to represent children during their parents' divorce or child custody disputes. When these judges hide their conflicts of interest, or they make orders that we can't record outside of courthouses that cost taxpayers $283 million to build.
You can't record on this property. If you want to record, you can record on the sidewalk. There's a new court order, man.
And the judges who are responsible for making this order are Judge Jessica Delgado, who is the supervising judge of the Santa Clara County Family Court, and Judge Julie Emity, who is the presiding judge of this courthouse and all the other ones in Santa Clara County. And these judges are very into their personal rights and their opinions. They're not so good when it comes to the law or public access and transparency in our courts, especially when it comes to the attorneys who are regularly appointed to represent children, and sometimes taxpayers, not just parents, are paying for those appointments.
Hi, I'm Roberta Hayashi, a judge of the Santa Clara County Superior Court.
Judges in family court may only make about $220,000 a year, but they hold enormous power, including the power to appoint attorneys to represent children during their parents' divorce or child custody disputes. And these appointments are big business for attorneys. Here's how it works. When a judge appoints an attorney for the child, it's often called minor's counsel, or in some states, guardian ad litem or GALS. And those attorneys then have immunity, and they're supposed to act in the best interests of the children, but that's not really clear exactly what that is, or what the attorneys are supposed to be doing, or why the children need an attorney in the first place because their parents are involved in a divorce. The parents are forced to pay the attorneys, and when the parents can't afford it, taxpayers foot the bill. The problem? There's no clear limits on what these attorneys can charge, no transparent records of what work they actually do, and no measurable outcomes for the parents or the public paying their bills. And we often find that these attorneys are the ones who incite the conflict and drag out the cases, and the judges let them, making more money for all the attorneys involved in the case. Some of these attorneys collect hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And how do they get appointed? Not through a clear legal standard, but often because they're favored by the judges. There's no system of checks and balances, no defined job requirements, and no meaningful oversight. Meanwhile, the parents are drained by court-ordered attorney's fees, and taxpayers cover massive payments. The courts themselves claim they can't even afford basic services like court reporters because they're paying all these attorneys for children. That means that families are left without official transcripts, making it nearly impossible to appeal unjust or unlawful rulings of the judge. It took us 4 years to obtain records on these appointments just from the Santa Clara County Court. What was in those records was absolutely shocking. We found a core group of attorneys being appointed in hundreds of cases. They were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars from taxpayers and also from the parents, who had to pay these attorneys privately based on the judge's orders. This is Catherine Schlepphorst, and she alone was paid over $600,000 just to represent children in their parents' divorce and custody cases, and taxpayers paid her fees when the parents couldn't afford to. After a decade of covering attorneys working in this courthouse, the judges decided to issue an order that I could no longer record them outside of the courthouse. The taxpayers paid $263 million to build, so I stood on the sidewalk to record the attorneys. This is Catherine Schlepphorst, and she's not only appointed in minors' counsel cases where taxpayers have paid her over $600,000 in recent years, but she's also drawn high-level private client cases where she's made millions of dollars, and she knows darn well what the attorneys do that is unethical, and she also knows that the judges won't discipline attorneys and pretty much let them get away with breaking the law.
There's at least like 3 one-liners in there that say like that stuff about.
Hi, Fong.
Hey,
How are ya?
good. How are you?
Good. Hi, Miss Schlepphorst. How are you?
Hi, fine.
How you doing on those minors' counsel appointments?
Getting it gone.
You have one of the highest minors' counsel public pay in the county from the public records we got.
Okay.
County's paying more money for minors' counsel right now than for court reporters. Do you have a comment about that? Hi.
Not surprisingly, attorneys who make the most money from parents and taxpayers often have no comment about what they're doing inside those courthouses. They have no comment about not getting court reporters in the cases, because court reporters would make an official transcript of court proceedings where they might capture attorney misconduct or attorneys committing malpractice in cases where they represent children, meaning the children could sue them for malpractice if they had a record of the court proceeding, but without a record, a lawsuit against these attorneys is not very likely. And while judges have absolute immunity, even if they break the law, they are required to make certain disclosures about the friendships, the professional relationships, and the political relationships that they have with the attorneys who appear before them over and over again. And yet we find this is rarely done. For example, Catherine Schlepphorst used to be law partners with the now presiding judge, Julie Emity, and Julie Emity used to appoint Catherine Schlepphorst or grant her payments as minors' counsel. And attorneys get favorable rulings from the judges who like them. And while the judges have absolute immunity, they are still required to make their disclosures, and they're also required to discipline attorneys who engage in misconduct. But just like police officers who are subject to internal affairs reports, judges rarely make findings or discipline the attorneys who they consider their friends or political supporters.
Okay, I can walk with you over there. Yeah, I'm gonna go that way.
네, 어서 가십시오.
There are 58 courts in the state of California, and public records from just this single court show that while the judges are approving a record number of payments to attorneys acting as minors' counsel, these courts don't have interpreters, court reporters, and they don't allow cameras in the courtrooms or outside of the courthouse, meaning the public courthouses seem to be working for the attorneys, but not for anybody else, where 90% of people involved in family court cases have to represent themselves.
The court's being sued about it right now.
What's going on?
So, they spend all this money on minors' counsel and other people, but they don't have court reporters in the courtrooms anymore. And they say they can't afford them, but and that same problem they had with interpreters.
So most reporters don't have job much?
So-
Or none at all?
Here I am on the sidewalk, officer, filming away since I'm not allowed to film on that side of the sidewalk.
Have a nice day, man.